I'm going to bring Nick Wright on. First things first, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. So I'm going to throw this at you, Nick. As I was building my brand as America's honesty broker back in Vegas,
yes,
I noticed this a lot with boxing, is that it wasn't often the opponent you fought. It was yourself. When you came into this massive wealth, it was hard to not go off the rail. You get $60 million for a fight. I mean, athletes have salary caps and they take pay cuts. And so you became managing yourself. And Marvin Hagler had the great line, hard to do road work at 5 a.m. when you got silk pajamas, right? And there's always been this talk. I've heard this before about hip hop stars. You talk about the struggle in your first 2 albums, and by the third, you have a yacht. So it's not as much of a struggle. And does the music not quite have that feel of the struggle, which is why we all fall in love with you, right? And I look at the Cowboys last night. I look at the Cowboys facilities, and I'm like, oh, my God, it's a Ritz-Carlton. They already overpay for average players. It's just New England lived in the world of nobody respects us. I look at the Cowboys, and I'm like, they might as well just pull Jerry's yacht into their practice facility. Do you buy any of this stuff? They're a coddled franchise.
Yeah, well, I think it's nice to have nice facilities, but I also think at some point there needs to be the realization that this century, the Cowboys are one of the 2 or 3 least successful teams in their entire conference. You know, in the last 20 years, which NFC teams haven't been to a conference championship game? It's the Lions and Washington. I think, I'm doing it off the top of my head, I think that's the entirety of the list. In fact, I think you only add Minnesota to the list of NFC teams if you say which teams haven't been to the Super Bowl out of that conference, except, of course, the Cowboys are also on that list. I mean, it's not just that you're 25 years removed from a dynasty. You're 25 years removed from being a game away from being a game away. And so I do think there is the element of when you have the nicest facilities and you're talked about the most and you have the loudest owner and you have, you're America's team and you're on TV the most, that maybe lends itself to what you're talking about, where the sense of accomplishment almost pervades a team that has not, if we're being honest, accomplished all that much since I was in high school.
Right.
So, yeah, I buy into that. It was a hell of a drone shot, though. Good production work by NFL Network. Good job by them.
Yeah, it was great. It was their 15th take, I read this morning. It took them a while to get it done. So it is interesting in all sorts of things, politics, sports, who we embrace and who we don't. And I just find it hysterical that Jeremy Fowler's reporting that NFL people are now saying, this is the year we figure out Lamar Jackson. And I have watched sports for 40 years. You never figure out stars. If they become non-stars, it's usually they didn't manage themselves, they didn't put in the time. But if they do, only injuries stop them from being stars. Nobody figured out Damian Lillard, and they never will until he gets old and beat up. So what do you make of this assertion the league is inches from figuring out Lamar Jackson?
So I find so much of the Lamar Jackson conversation fascinating because I think so much of it is done without saying what people are really trying to say. Like, I actually do think folks, for the most part, have figured Lamar out. But that doesn't mean they can stop it. Like, I don't think people are shocked by what he's doing. I think they have a very good idea of what he's going to do, but it doesn't mean you have an effective way to defeat what he's going to do. I also think that it is very fair to say there's an obvious, where his game is limited at the higher level passing, that has particularly, reared up in the biggest spots in high leverage moments. That is the next step for Lamar to take. But the reason I find the conversation so fascinating is the loudest and most vocal Lamar Jackson critics, most intelligent people, want nothing to do with them. It's like, wait, who are the people on Twitter saying Lamar stinks? And you go to their Twitter feed, it's like, oh, That's a really mean tweet that person sent to Joy Taylor. And then you scroll down further and it's like, oh, are they advocating horse dewormer for COVID? Like, oh, I don't want to be with that guy. That guy's an idiot. And so because of that, many in the media, I think, have almost, patronized Lamar. Because the guy won an MVP. The guy's an unbelievable player. And he also, much like an MVP in another league, who I use the comp a lot, needs his game to grow.
Yeah.
I've always said Lamar's like Giannis. And I think the Ravens can take a page out of the Bucs playbook. The Bucs this year took a step back in the regular season to work on things, to be like, listen, we know we can be a dominant regular season team, but we need to make sure we can be a dominant postseason team. If I'm Baltimore, I am taking more advantage or more time during the regular season to work on some of the multi-level passing, so I am more prepared for it if I am down 7 in a playoff game, even if it means I go 11-6 instead of 13-4, because I think that's the next level for Baltimore, and I think most people watching it can see that.
So you have always kind of been not a fan, more of an advocate of Cam than I am. He was a.
I've been a fan.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I think I've said this. Cam is a unique all-time prospect. Justin Fields is a great prospect. Justin throws a better football. I think he's more mature. I think you can win. His way is sitting in the pocket and throwing darts, and because the Bears have a bad O-line, moving well if it deteriorates. Cam, if you take out his running, was a 58% completion percentage guy. That's what he was. I think Justin Fields is a much better prospect than Cam Newton. I think Cam's going to be more popular because he was so unique. He was big. He looked like a model. He had the perfect smile. He literally ran over defensive players. So when I look at Chicago and all these questions about Justin Fields, I look at it and I think he's an unbelievable prospect. I think Cam was just a unique prospect. What do you make of the Chicago situation and my assertion that we always put our arms around certain people? Cam's been one of them, and now his career's about ready to peter out, and it's been really a bunch of 1 year and nothing.
Yeah. And listen, in Cam's latest situation is all his own doing, and when your career's hanging by a thread, you probably shouldn't put yourself in a position where you're going to be away from the team for nearly a week. And I would start Justin Fields. I can't believe the Bears are really going to start Andy Dalton week 1. It seems unfathomable to me. I know we disagree there. But I also think it's a little revisionist history about Cam the prospect. Cam was so popular because he had one of the greatest college football seasons ever, was a no-brainer number 1 pick, and took a team from 1-15 to within 5 years, 15-1, a unanimous MVP, and the Super Bowl, or a near unanimous MVP. So I don't know that Justin Fields will ever reach the apex Cam got to. The problem for Cam was he couldn't maintain it, and he actually never really, aside from that MVP year, you didn't see massive growth in his game. So I think you could say Cam's story is one of untapped potential, but as a prospect, I feel like Cam was one of the best, no doubt, prospects we've seen. He just didn't necessarily evolve the way myself and many of us that have always rooted for Cam thought he would, and now he seems to be squandering what could have been a really good opportunity. But I don't think Justin Fields the prospect Cam was.
Okay, I do, but we'll disagree. Mac Jones, Cam Newton after the second COVID road bump. Who would you start and why?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think Cam's probably still the starter as of, 12:40 p.m. Eastern this Wednesday, but that could change. And if it is close, about 90% of the league is vaccinated. So if we haven't heard that you're definitively not, I will assume you are, because the numbers dictate it. So I'm going to assume Mac Jones is. We know Cam isn't. If it's close, part of the math I'm doing if I'm Belichick is, do I think he's likely to have another protocol slip-up? Do I think it's likely that he has to, impromptu miss time again? The answer to that question is yes. So it is baffling to me that Cam while this really is going to be the last shot he gets if this goes sour, if this goes sideways. And last year, one could argue, was derailed because of COVID, but there was nothing he could do about that. There's plenty he could do about this, and the fact that he hasn't done it is disappointing as someone that's always supported him. And I wasn't a huge Mac Jones guy coming out of Alabama, but the Patriots obviously were. They spent a first-round pick on him. And if it is close, I think the Cam's vaccination status, just from a pure football pragmatism standpoint, could be enough to tip the scales in Mac Jones's favor.
Nick Wright, he's really coming together as a young talent. He's got a nice little tan. You've been dressing well lately. You've got really
young talent.
Really,
he's got kids in high school. Young talent.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.